My mind is upset. I can change my mindset. Do not be thrown offset. Rumor time reset. Rumor time.
Welcome to the Access RUMERTIME Conversations podcast. My name is Dr. Yvonne Murray Laria, and we are so excited to have you join us today.
Hello, this is Georges Prosper, and I'm so excited to be with you today.
Hello, this is Soleil Burgess, and I am very honored to be a guest on this podcast this evening.
Hello, my name is Lynn Prosper, and I'm very excited to be with all of you today.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vanessa Kelly-Brew, and I am excited about the topic for this evening, and I look forward to hearing your comments.
Good evening. I am Dr. Geneva Fleming, and as always, it is a pleasure to join these other co-hosts in this Access RUMERTIME conversation. Let's get started.
Yay! Let's get ready to rumble. So this evening, our topic is pretty heavy, but we're going to try to make it relatable and understandable. The topic we're going to be discussing is basically how to recognize and understand and manage emotional abuse, emotional or psychological abuse. And could someone read for us or share with our audience the definition that we're going to be working from? What's our definition that we're going to use of emotional abuse?
Emotional abuse is a form of abuse characterized by a person subjecting or exposing another person to behavior that may be in psychological trauma, including anxiety, chronic depression, post-traumatic stress disorder.
All right. Awesome. So how does that look to somebody actually experiencing it? So read some of that again for me.
Characterized by a person subjecting or exposing another person to behavior that may result in psychological trauma.
Right.
Yeah.
So being exposed or exposing somebody to, right? Mm-hmm. So it causes psychological trauma or it causes that emotional abuse. And one of the things that we know, and we talked about in our previous episode, that emotional abuse is one of the hardest forms of abuse to recognize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why do we think that is?
Well, I think one of the things, Dr. Laria, we have to put a face to that trauma. What does it look like? Like, what does humiliation looks like, for instance? That's one of the things. If a person is playing mind games with another, like, what does that actually look like? Mm-hmm. So because it's difficult to put a picture, because everybody's experience is different. Mm-hmm. That, I believe, is one of the reasons it is so hard to pinpoint and identify emotional abuse. But we do have information, and maybe we'll unpack some of that tonight.
Okay. All right.
To be honest, I think we have to talk about the signs of emotional abuse. So I'm going to read to you guys some of the signs of emotional abuse. So one is humiliates you either alone or in front of other people. That's one. Calls you too sensitive when you respond to abusive comments. Belittles you and trivializes your hopes, dreams, and accomplishments. Tries to control you and your behavior. Another one is isolates you from family and friends. Then is blames you for his or her problems. And I think this one is one of the most problematic ones that I have read. Gaslights you to make you doubt your sanity.
Yeah.
And has extramarital affairs and becomes emotionally distant and withholds sex to control you. And it might not just be sex. It could be different things that they know that you value. Something that you're actually looking for. Maybe it might be attention. Maybe it might be finances. Whatever it is, but they use something to control you. And the last one, likes respect and points out your mistakes or shortcomings.
So the person, it sounds like people would be, whether you are male or female, you'll be walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You will, it impacts, or it has an influence on your sense of self, your worth.
Yeah. It makes you second guess everything that you think about yourself. So by the time you reach other people, and if you're already dealing with anxiety or depression or anything like that, it makes it worse, because now not only am I thinking these thoughts, but there's someone who's projecting those things on me. So now I'm getting it internally and externally, and that makes the person struggle even more, because they're going, I have no way out.
And then to add to what Georges is saying, the person really does begin to question themselves and to doubt themselves, and it kind of falls into that trap of what the perpetrator is trying to make the person think, that they're crazy. That person may actually start to think, well, maybe I am missing something here. Maybe I am, it may not be so clear that this is what is really happening, but rather they may internalize it to the point of saying it really is me. Like, I am the one at fault.
Right.
I'm the one that's guilty here.
Right. It looks like Soleil has something to say. I saw you making some motions.
I was just agreeing on everything that you all had said.
So Soleil was just agreeing with everything that everybody was saying. All right. I have a question.
Yes.
So what we talked about just now seems to be in reference to male, female, or love relationships, right? Whether it's male, female, male, 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 female, female, it doesn't matter. Those kinds of relationships. But I know people who are in emotionally abusive relationships with their parents.
Very much so.
How do we... You can't divorce your parents necessarily.
Well, in America, you can.
Well, that's true. But in other cultures,
Yeah,
where,
it's not reality.
Yeah, so and America is just one part of the globe.
Yeah.
And so how do we help? Well, we're not going to get there yet. So we're identifying, we're recognizing. So we're recognizing that emotional abuse is not just love, those kinds of love romantic relationships, I should say.
Or intimate partner.
Right, or intimate partner relationships. Emotional abuse can also take place with parent-child.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And who else?
And friends as well.
Yes, friends, college friends, school friends. It's part of bullying, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's part of manipulation as well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For myself, I remember there was a friend of mine, because I'm very inclusive, I'm very eclectic, so I want to get to know everybody. If you're around me, like, I'm going to welcome you, and we're going to be family at some point. And I remember a friend of mine who used to try to, like, isolate me from other people, because they wanted me all to themselves. And I was like, I don't function like that.
Right.
Like, I'm trying to make sure that everyone that I come around, I feel welcome, feel happy, because I know for myself, when I first got to Alabama, there was a lot of people that I knew, but then there was a lot of people that I didn't know. And those first couple of months, I felt so alone. But then there was a group of people that took me in, but they didn't know me. So for me, I'm like, I wanted to give back to new people to make sure that you don't have that feeling of just alone and there's no one. Because I don't know what you left wherever you came from. When you come here now, this is a new place, new territory. Let's work on it together. But that manipulative aspect, I didn't see it until I started noticing, like, oh my gosh, like, there are certain people that don't come around me anymore when you're around. There's certain people that and it creeps up on you. And that's why when I'm reading this emotional abuse stuff, as you were saying, like, hey, could it just be family? Could it just be a lover? And I'm like, no, it's anyone that you have a relationship with. Because these things, because it doesn't have to be someone to curse you out to tell you that you're nothing. Like, they can do it in such a easy way. Oh, you don't have to worry about that class. It's okay if you fail a couple of classes. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, why do you dream so high? Like, why do you want to be so... It's okay. Like, minimalism is okay. Like, it's okay for you to get the bare minimum. There's nothing wrong with that.
And so as a young adult, Soleil, I'm gonna pull you into this conversation. As a young adult, how do you see this type of emotional or psychological abuse playing out in maybe people you know who are in your similar age bracket? And you're in the age bracket of 18 to 22 or 23, right? So Soleil is in that group. The rest of us are,
Seasoned.
mature. Or, mature. Yes.
I see it very often. There's a lot of people who, don't like to share people. They want people all to themselves. I don't really know the history of that or why, but it's as though they would rather have you all to themselves and sort of isolate you from everyone else, so you're always on their side, as though they have this fear that if you get new friends, I've experienced that, that you'll totally disregard them, that you won't bring them around. If your friends don't like them, it's like, oh, she doesn't like me, you can't like her, she's messing up our friendship. It's a lot of things. It's definitely things that are underlined, that are wrong with them, but they definitely try to put that on to you. And for me personally, I'm not for that. I'm like George's over here. I like to meet new people. I do. I don't feel that I have to be in this one particular box, because that's not how I am. My parents definitely didn't raise me to be like that. And I've always been outgoing. So I just feel as though if you feel like that, I'm sorry, that's a personal issue. But don't try to bring that and put that on me, because that is just not the way that I roll. So as for me, when I have friends like that, I try to bring them, because everyone's experience is different. There are other things. Sometimes you just constantly bring people around others, and it slowly breaks the barriers, the walls that they have up, because whatever may have happened, they could have been abused, emotionally, physically, constantly demeaned by the people that they trust or trusted. So it's best to bring people around more. And if they still are not receptive, then you can't really change people at all. You can try to influence, but you cannot change. That is just not possible. I mean, I've never accomplished that. So
you won't. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. You just dropped some knowledge there, girl. That's right. You represented your age group.
Yeah. And so one point that I'd like to sort of capture here is listening to Soleil share, as well as George's. I'm hearing about, manipulation, intimidation, isolation. And what it says to me is it really doesn't matter the setting or the situation. Emotional abuse is emotional abuse is emotional abuse. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about, friendships on a college campus, or intimate partner relationship, or the boys hanging out. If one is trying to isolate or manipulate or intimidate, those are all forms of emotional abuse. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Vanessa and Lynn, we haven't heard from you guys. We need to hear from you guys.
As I was hearing everyone talking, the first thought that came to my mind with emotional abuse, it's almost that the manipulation, the gaslighting, the humiliation, and isolating you. It's a control factor, yes, but it makes me go, man, that person has to be very insecure,
Mm-hmm.
and they're looking for a self-worth. So that projection, validation.
Mm-hmm.
So they're doing that. They're looking for that in somebody that they consider weak.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it's because they're weak themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not able to get that from someone else. So they need to feel a sense of power.
Mm-hmm.
So they pick up a victim,
Mm-hmm.
and they go, I'm going to build myself up
Mm-hmm.
through
By
you,
putting this one down.
by putting you down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, like you said, that's bullying. That's essentially what bullying is in general.
Yeah.
You know, all this doesn't start overnight. Maybe this person was emotionally abused as a child, and now it perpetuates, and they continue on with it because I need to have control back. I need, like a narcissist almost. I have this low self-esteem, but in order for me to feel powerful and to feel bigger, I have to do this to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. And do you? I agree. I totally agree. But do you even think? And this can veer off into a whole nother podcast. But do you even think that those people are conscious about their role as, I want to manipulate you?
Not always. Sometimes I do think sometimes they may be, because power is addictive.
Mm-hmm.
That feeling of being powerful and being able to say, to know that if I say this to somebody, I'm gonna have a reaction. Everyone knows someone like that, right? If I say, man, that shirt is not really that cute on you, girl, and then I see how your face will change. Some people get a drive on adrenaline rush. It makes them feel good. So I think they may be aware of that feeling, and it feels good, so they continue on with it. But in terms of the psychological, breaking it down, the logic behind it, and going, okay, I'm going to calculate what to say. No, not necessarily. But it's an emotional rush and drive that they probably get from it.
Okay. Vanessa, what do you?
Well, I think listening to the conversation so far, we're talking about people who are the abusers, those who are the ones that are manipulating and trying to control other people or the situation. But I wonder about the people who are in the relationship who are
The
being
victims.
abused, manipulated. And for them, right, it's a possibility that they may have been in a home where they've seen that modeled for them. I used to work for a domestic violence shelter, and I will tell you that, I did not have any idea of all of the different forms of abuse there were. And emotional abuse is one that I guess I just never even thought about until I started working with the women. And one of the things that I heard often was, I don't understand how I got into a situation like this. I feel like I'm educated. I thought that, I was driven. I didn't think that I would end up in a relationship where I allowed someone to control me to the point now where, here I am here in a shelter. And so I do want to talk about those people.
The victims, basically, the victims of abuse.
Right.
And I also want to add to that, Vanessa, and I'm going to go back to the parent-child emotional abuse thing as another demographic that is locked into a relationship.
They can't get out.
They can't get out. And you if you grow up in a home where a parent is controlling, you grow up as an adult. And I know several people who are reeling from, several adult people who are reeling from being in homes where, growing up in homes where their parents or a parent was emotionally abusive. And these people today are struggling to find their sense of self.
Yes, you lose yourself.
You lose yourself, and it impacts your relationships or your ability to even establish, romantic relationships. And if you do, you're kind of lost. You kind of, how am I supposed to be? And then what tends to happen is that you find somebody unconscious.
Recreate that.
Say, girl.
You recreate that relationship.
It brings back to, I think, Geneva, you had said something earlier where you said each cycle entraps the victim into replicative and reactionary relationships.
Mm-hmm. And that's what this is.
That is
exactly what it is, right? And so how, when the women ask the question, how did we get here?
Or men.
Or men, right? Yeah. How did we get here?
Right.
What happened along the way for me to get here?
And that's probably where the understanding part comes in,
right?
In the rumor time
process, right? So we will wrap up. Let's review some of the signs and symptoms, signs of emotional abuse. So quickly, let's say what some of those were. Feeling like you don't matter.
Humiliation.
Gaslighted.
Belittles you, tries to control you, isolates you, blames you,
manipulation,
you, and makes you second guess all of your hopes and dreams.
Okay. All right. So there you have it. First segment where we recognized and identified signs of emotional abuse. We'll be right back.
Are you and your family seeking healthy mindsets, actions, relationships, knowledge, emotions, resources, and skills? Well, backed by popular demand, GC Scored presents RUMERTIME Family Summer Camp, a social emotional wellness program starting June the 14th to the 26th at the venue St. Michael and All Angels Episcopal Church, down to the roots.
Hi, I'm Faith.
I'm Chioma.
I'm Lifase.
And we're Afro Chic. Afro Chic seeks to empower the younger generation of African women who are growing up in America.
We empower women by social events, networking, skill building, and sisterhood. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at @TheAfroChic. We hope to see you there.
You're listening to Access RUMERTIME Conversations, a bi-monthly podcast that focuses on 5 social emotional problem-solving strategies to help you become a conscious problem solver and an empowered life coach. Welcome back to the Access RUMERTIME Conversations podcast.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. When we left from the last segment, we were talking about victim and how they end up in emotionally abusive relationships. And we talked a little bit about what that looks like. And one of the things we had talked about was the subtleties of the. And so that is what I would like to know is like, what does that manipulation look like?
If I'm honest, I remember I used to, and I used to think that machismo man that comes and picks you up on your feet and wines and dines you and makes you feel wonderful. And then a couple of scenes later, he's the same man that's beating you up. Man, that's fake. And as I became a therapist, I'm realizing, oh my gosh, abuse is in every single bracket. It doesn't matter how much you make, little you make, if you even make enough to count it as something. There's a possibility that you meet someone that might find your vulnerability and use it against you. Enough space of inconsistency because you're going to look at everything in a way that makes you doubt yourself, the people around you, but then that person, the thing that they do, they control it because they make you feel loved one day, and then they make you feel destitute the next day, and then they pull you back in. I watched a documentary a long time ago about how pimps would break women, and what they would do is like they want this wonderful thing, back away and feel like nothing, and then they give them the love, and then they go back, and then they give them love, and then these people get so sucked into, I don't care what's happening during the bad moments, I just want a hint of the good moments, and they live off those 5 seconds, but forgetting about the rest of the 24 hours that they're spending in hell.
Right.
Demoralizing things that's happening to us. Like, and you don't have to be a pimp, but at the same time, you don't someone's emotions.
You're absolutely right, and that is one of the characteristics for an abuser, right? They are very charismatic, right? And one of the things that you said, George, is like they know who to target. And, you know, when we were talking about like what, you know, someone sees their homegrown things that are important to you may not have seen your father physically abusing your mom. Most people so if dad was someone who necessarily physically abused mom, but was one who may have like gone out, you know, with the boys and stayed out a little too long, and then comes back home, you know, and mom is asking, well, hey, where are you? And you might see mom and dad, you know, hash it out a little bit, but then you see dad bringing mom flowers, and then mom is, you know, hugging and kissing on him, you know, and things are going better with them. So, you know, that might in your mind paint this picture of, okay, well, you know, he's not abusing mom, you know, so, you know, when you get into a relationship and somebody is showing you that attention, that affection, that's what you did see from mom and dad. That's what you saw. So for you, that feels like love. But then when they take that away from you again, now you're falling back on, okay, I remember this too. You know, so what we need to do is work this out. So you're willing to work that out. And there you go. So that moves into this cycle, right? You know, this tension building, right? Actual thing that happens. And once you have this actual thing that happens, then we start working on trying to build back the relationship, and then we fall back into this honeymoon period again. So that's why we see like this cycle of violence. So you're absolutely right when you gave her analogy of breaking, you know, the women. It's because, you know, what woman doesn't want to feel, you know, or have a man wine and dine, attention and affection. So you're absolutely right. They know that this is what I need to do to pull them in and away from them, and then I draw back into them, because now what I'm doing, I'm leaving them want something. I'm confusing them.
Yeah, I totally agree. But can I just piggyback?
Yeah, go ahead.
Many people think abuse looks like it is not always physical, as we're talking about now. It's very emotional. A lot of times, actually, I know seen abuse relationships with my family members, and I never, you know, every time. Well, as a child, you're just like, oh, abusive. Mommy hits daddy, or, you know, because men can't get a try to take that off. That's right. It's very possible. But it just reminds me of this quote when it comes to emotional abuse. Emotional abuse is internal scars. It's not what you see on the outside. Emotional abuse, my little quote, emotional abuse is grinding the axe on a stone, internal. slicing you up. And physical abuse is like using an axe on someone. You physically see it. But emotional is way more damaging.
Right.
It's internal. It stays there way longer. Physical scars occur, but I'll be walking with you, you're carrying it, you're putting it into many relationships.
All
Every
relationships.
You know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. It becomes a part of your, what I would say, your mental canvas, right? Before it's a filter.
Yeah.
It becomes the filter now that you see everything through. You see every relationship.
Yeah.
And you see, first of all, as a victim. And you operate from a position of victimhood.
I think the scariest part about it is that it's masked with the illusion of love, right? It starts off like that with every relationship. For example, a parent and child, where the parent may say, you know, because I love you so much. I know my parent, in terms of the physical, my mom and dad used to tell us, oh, we love you, that's why we give you spankings, right? So in terms of the emotional, you can tell a child, oh, because I said so, or real reason for why you're doing what you're doing. You know, so it hits every type of relationship. It's not just the romantic. You have to think of it just as a romantic, a lover, you know, but it's not always like that. It affects everything. And then on top of that, when you're starting that off as a child, that's where it starts to build. So everyone you come into contact with, and you touched on this earlier when you said you end up losing yourself. And if you really watch someone who has been emotionally abused, they do lose themselves. They forget who they are. You know, that isolation becomes normal. So
and being gaslighting.
Yeah. You end up even being around other people. That social anxiety, you can't even do that anymore because that's not a norm for you anymore. You're so used to always being an abuser. And that's where I was saying that it manifests from that love, that illusion of love, where you want to be that person. And to go back to where you were saying, how did that the woman asking, how did I get myself in this situation? It's a very slow, and you can end up there because you think it's love,
right?
You think it's normal, and before you know it, you're lost. You're gone.
Like red flags don't look like red anymore,
because the same red flags for physical abuse may not be the same for emotional abuse.
Right. And also, it doesn't just start with that relation, that the current emotionally abusive relationship. That's not the first time.
There's a root.
Exactly. Right. That's not the first time you experienced emotional abuse. If we were to look deeper, go to the roots of it, and look for past relationships, all types of relationships, especially those early childhood relationships, we more than likely would see those red flags. Now we can look back and we can say, oh,
that's what that was.
That's how I learned. That's how I learned to, put up with stuff, because I saw my dad giving my mom flowers every 2 seconds, and imprinted on my brain was, okay, so this is what I have to do. And if people were to, and be able to apply the RUMERTIME process, helping themselves to see, recognize, and understand their thoughts, their interactions, emotions as it as it, what's the word I'm looking for? As it relates to themselves and their stories, right? As it relates to themselves, others, and their stories, they would come to understand that the emotional abuse taking place in the present is not the beginning of that.
Exactly.
So I feel like it's a good time for us to pause for a second and just tell parents, whatever relationship you want your children to have, whatever you're showing them, that's what they will believe is the honest truth. If they're seeing abuse, emotional, physical, that's what they're gonna think is okay. So we have to learn how to model and help practice good, healthy relationships in front of them so they can see. There's nothing wrong with having a disagreement, but if you're going to have a disagreement, if you're going to argue in front of them, you're going to apologize in front of them. To yell, you come back and say, hey, I shouldn't have yelled at you like that, but do the same thing in front of them. Once they see those things, they'll understand, oh, people make mistakes, but it's okay to come back and correct.
Treat your kids like little adults because they're gonna grow up. So start teaching them how to have those conversations.
Right.
Saying that right now, it brings me to okay. When you were just saying that right now, it reminds me of something that happened to me as a child, and I was talking to George about this the other day, and it's crazy how things hit you when we're talking about the root, right? And I was telling him, man, I have trouble with math till this day, second grade math, because like telling just addition and subtraction, not because I'm dumb. I can easily multiply, but the simple math I have trouble with because I was traumatized during that time.
I have, girl, we must have been in the same experience. Yes.
Let me tell you. Yes. So when you said just parents, I'm gonna go ahead and say in general, any interaction you have with a child, very careful what you say, because this teacher, she was a student teacher, and she should not have been.
She scarred you.
She scarred me. She really did. But she didn't know my parents were immigrants. They were working hard. They didn't have time to help me with my homework. So I would come to class not prepared, second grade. And she would tell me, you're stupid. How come you don't know this answer to this? Why aren't you getting it together? Go sit out in the hallway until you figure it out. And because of that, I started to think to myself, oh, I am stupid. Because it starts when you're little.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
And I couldn't speak up. I didn't know who to tell, because my parents, coming from an immigrant background, you have to do well in school. That's a given, So I'm like, I can't tell my parents what's going on because maybe they'll be disappointed in me. And then my classmates are laughing, thinking it's funny. And so I'm feeling humiliated in that setting. So there's no one I can talk to. And I'm looking at her as an authoritative figure, someone I can trust.
That's it. Yeah.
Because from beforehand, the teachers before were very loving, and they would sit with me and talk with me. So I see a teacher as someone I can trust. You're my authority. I'm supposed to learn from you. So if you're telling me I'm stupid, I must be.
Right.
Because of that, it took me a while in order to go. Taught you this. It's not because you're dumb or stupid, like she's saying. It's because you weren't taught this. No one at home is helping you through this. So that's I really want. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I really want us to really watch what we say. Be very, very mindful of that.
Because children, the traumas I don't even want to say it to be that severe, because then what it does, it organizes the other behaviors or interactions that are not classified as, you know what I'm saying? And so people then minimize, well, it's not trauma, but if it happens once, and you're remembering it,
yes, till
and it mattered.
Oh, yeah.
And it has an impact.
Oh, yeah.
And so, so is our time.
Our time is up, and that was a wonderful conversation. Now we'll have you listen to these wonderful announcements, and we'll be back with the next exciting segment.
How would you like to take your life coach with you wherever you go? Well, GC Scored can make that happen for you. Purchase the RUMERTIME Guided Activity Journal on Amazon.com or directly from GC Scored's online store at www.org for the price of $19.99. The Access RUMERTIME Conversations podcast is brought to you by GC Scored and the Leadership Institute, and your co-host, Dr. Yvonne Murray-Larrier, Dr. Geneva Fleming, Vanessa Kelly-Brew, Lynn Prosper, and Georges Prosper. Thank you for listening. Welcome back to the Access RUMERTIME Conversations podcast.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Session, we was just talking about how, from the victim's perspective, how they find themselves in an emotional abuse relationship, and they're wondering how they ended up in a situation like that. And we talked about how sometimes it can be very subtle, and how the experiences that we have as children, how they imprint on us, and so how they are in our psyche and how we relive experiences, and so how that then ties that subtlety, how we find ourselves in those relationships. And so for this segment, we're going to talk about how we manage that. Right. So once we recognize what emotional abuse is, and we understand what it looks like and how we got into an abusive relationship, then how do we manage that?
How do we manage that? Good question. How do we manage it?
To be honest with me, I want to back it up just a little bit. The one thing I realized is before everyone knows how to break you down, they have to know where the bones are buried and the secrets are at. So as you're getting into a relationship or contemplating getting into a relationship, I would take your everything. For me, when we first started dating, I met so many different people before Lynn, and I noticed something that was a little bit strange. And so I would someone, and they would ask the girl, "Hey, what do you like?" And then whatever the girl said would automatically morph into that thing. And then a girl would ask, and I've done it myself, to put myself out there. And then I would notice those relationships didn't last. And I would see other people who are like, I don't understand. Why did they, Georges, when I met them, they were this, they were that, they knew everything about me, and then they just changed. And I said, maybe they stopped, maybe not them going back to who they are because they know you're not going anywhere. I mean, one of the things that I try to tell people now is just take your time. You don't have to tell anybody everything. When you feel that rapport has been built and you see, then you can start to talk and give them a little at a time, not everything, because you might be giving a narcissist the ammo to use against you and you don't even know it. So take your time. But one of the things when it comes to the aftermath of abuse, I need to focus. You know, okay, I've been through this. I see the sign, and let your emotion. Be free to be able to say, you know what, I'm hurt right now. Whatever I'm feeling, I'm going to feel it, and I don't want anyone to minimize it. I don't want anyone. Like, I went through this experience, because until you up and you allow yourself to feel the sting, then you will have to stop and say, you know what? That's the reason why if I ever see something like that again, I'll. So allow yourself to feel that and take time out. Don't jump into, then you'll be passing red flags all over again because you're rebounding. Just take your time. Just spend some time and heal from whatever happened in the past.
So, Georges, you have a few more tips.
Just one more.
Just one more?
The last thing is just
because I was going to say, because those are good tips. I was going to say, right, let some other people.
I talk a lot, so it's a little bit hard. The therapist started. The therapist.
I know. I'm just saying,
just a little bit.
Just.
Editor, I need you to copy that part out, okay? So I just have two. God bless you. Okay.
Editor, hold on. I wanted you to say, but I wanted to get, because these are good tips. But the thing is, it kind of is almost like closer, right? It kind of like it's a.
I mean, you were saying stuff I wanted to say too.
Right,
like,
so it's kind of like a close. It's closing. It's closing it.
It sounded like a closing.
Yeah, exactly.
See, for me, I thought like I'm gonna give my 2 cents. She's gonna give her 2 cents.
We kind of wanted
or
to
let's do it a conversation.
It's a right, and so that's what. Yeah.
Okay, so editor, we're back.
Okay.
So how do we cope with this? So I have a so this is one of the tips that I'm thinking about, and I want your opinion, ladies. So what do you think about? For me, I think it's good to just let yourself feel the emotion, because I think it's disingenuous of yourself to go through an event that was unhealthy or a situation that was unhealthy and just run past it and just go to something else or pretend like that didn't happen or it didn't hurt that much. I feel like it's good for you to just allow yourself to feel whatever emotions is coming, so you can know what that pain feels like, so you can know that it's reminiscent of what I don't want to ever go back to. What do you guys think? What do you ladies think?
I feel as though you have to feel the pain in order to avoid those mistakes next time, or at least be able to identify the red flags.
Okay.
Instead of jumping in. Many people, they would go through these horrible experiences, but they don't want to feel the pain. As you said, they just rebound, and it's even worse because then something happens or it repeats from the already previous toxic relationship they were in, and then they keep running and they keep running. It keeps building and keeps building, and then they're just there after a while, and they haven't understood it. I just think, yeah.
And it perpetuates the pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that is the hard part for people. Because who wants to feel pain?
Nobody.
Nobody wants to feel pain, but that really is very courageous, right? And that is taking ownership of your own life, your own experiences, you know, rather than giving them up to someone else, you know. Absolutely. And so you're right. If you can be courageous enough to stare that thing right in the face, you know, and get through it, you know, and hopefully, you know, you will prepare yourself to have better, more healthy relationships, you know, in the long run.
Absolutely.
And recognizing this is part of your story.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
It is. It's a part of your story.
In the RUMERTIME process, this is a reflection. Like you just reflection on this is part of the story. I'm going to reflect on how this has changed, shifted, adjusted. How are you different based on that? And what lesson can you learn from the pain? Because if you just go through meaningless pain, it's nothing. But if you have to learn, like there's a lesson in there for you. Like, what is it? Is it I know what to never go back to. I know what that looks like now. I know what triggers that I need to avoid. I know what red flags not to rush past.
And there's a saying that I have: in order to be effective, you must be reflective. You know, and so
that's stained in my brain.
It's stained in your brain. In order to be effective, you must be reflective. So pain on time is meaningless. And John Dewey, he's an educator, American educator. Well, he was, said that learning takes place when you reflect on what you've learned. So you can amass knowledge and information and go through experiences, but if you don't reflect on it, because reflecting is where you learn, that's where the learning takes place. So what's our next co-host wanting to say?
Oh, I was just gonna say that I think when you were asking what we think as ladies, I think as women we really need to, and men as well, when in terms of relationships, I think you really need to find yourself. Find yourself again and ask yourself, is this really what I want? These feelings that I'm feeling, once you recognize them and you hone them in and you're reflecting on them, that's that self-discovery of, I'm worth enough? Why am I allowing myself to go through this? And just also asking yourself if you're really happy. Is this what happiness looks like to you? You know, it's those feelings. Somebody who's abused, when you really sit down and think about it, as much as that illusion of love is placed in there, that with the emotional abuse, how unpredictable it is. At the end of the day, that's not love. That's not, somebody who truly cares for you would never put you through that. And you're not going to be genuinely happy being isolated, being manipulated, you know, being torn down, being gaslighted. You're questioning yourself all the time. It's a slow road to insanity.
And so how should a young adult handle being in an emotionally abusive relationship? How do they get out of it? What are some steps they can take?
Well, it's always good to have a support system. You know, it's already challenging trying to figure out a way to get out when you're constantly being demeaned and abused. So as a friend, I would say, because I haven't been in this position before, so if I was a friend dealing with this secondhand, because you know, whatever happens to your close friends, it affects you.
Of course.
So first, I would educate myself and understand the dynamics of this domestic violence, this emotional abuse that my friend is going through. Because if I've never been in it, I can't just start throwing out demands. I mean, who do I think I am?
Right.
It is definitely about power and control. And the person is already struggling in this relationship, knowing that they don't even have any power or control over their lives. So for me to come in and be like, girl, just leave them. Are you like, what are you doing? It's
counterproductive.
It just does not help. So always be educated about this situation so you don't go in there making things worse. And then also let your loved one know that you're concerned, you know, because you're gonna see it. Obviously, if you're around them enough, he's going to show his true colors in front of you, because a lot of them, and not just she as well, but a lot of people know how to put on that mask and wear it well. You'd be like, oh, look at him, girl, he's such a great man. They're like, yes, girl, but really, she's like, no, girl, he knocks me upside my head every day. You know, he demeans me every day. Wait till we leave here. What he's going to say to me in the car, you know, is a lot of that. So always let them know, like, hey, I heard, you know, pull them to the side. You don't want to make things worse. Do things in private, but let them know that you're concerned and you're there for them. Do not pressure them, because that just makes it worse, in my opinion. And listen and support their decisions. They already don't have control, as I said. So for them to leave is not as easy. Try to guide them without pressuring them. And we all know that when you try to pressure people, some people are just like, no, they go completely against what you say.
Yeah.
So be very loving, genuine. Let them know that you're hurt. Definitely be calm about it. Don't just yell, because it will go in one ear and out the other, I would say. And then also for yourself, because as you try to help your friend out, you're going to feel that stress and that strain as well, because you're getting so worried and wrapped up. As my friend, some people are very genuine, like Lynn, they take other people's issues on because they feel so deeply for them and they want their best interests at heart. And that also affects your mental health. So always make sure that you take out your time for self-care. That's what I would say. The only way you can help someone is if you're helping yourself and if you're in the right state of mind.
Awesome. All right, girl. Dropping some knowledge. Woo. All right. So here's what how would I help people who grew up in homes where the parents were emotionally abusive, i.e. controlling, right? Overindulgent, overprotective, very strict. How, and those adult people now, those children who are now adults, are having a difficult time navigating relationships, life, and just being independent and productive. So some of the things I would say to help people in those situations is, one, take the time out for yourself. Take time out for yourself. I would also say journal. Do a lot of journaling. And as you know, GC School has the RUMERTIME Guided Activity Journal. You can get it on our website or you can get it on Amazon, but it's critical to do the work. Because you can't undo what happened. You can't change your parents. They are however old they are right now, and there's nothing you can do. And you have to find a way to break free from that abuse. And so sometimes it may mean you moving away from them. Sometimes it may mean you disconnecting in terms of not calling every day, not visiting every weekend, not going to Big Mama's house on Sundays, and because you know that all of those activities and those connections are keeping you in bondage. And so you have to start, one, taking care of yourself, journaling, and putting up structures in your own life to create some distance away from that toxic relationship. Find yourself. Find what gives you purpose. Find what you're passionate about. And that is very difficult coming out of a relationship where you have been controlled, your thinking has been controlled, it has been manipulated. And if there was any type of religious overtone or undertone, that makes it even more complicated. And so sometimes you may just have to separate yourself.
Do you think it would be a good idea for them to, let's say for those individuals who love their family but they don't love what happened, to maybe start setting boundaries and then holding true to those boundaries, even if the people who made them feel those emotions in the past, and whether main perpetrator of the unhealthy behavior that they saw, start setting new boundaries with them and then saying, hey, I'm going to hold to these boundaries because it's my safeguard now.
Right. It is. That's important. But I think before they can even get there, because remember, they didn't have an identity. They're now 30, 40, even 50.
It's the truth.
And they've never had the opportunity to figure out who they are.
Yeah.
Right? And so now, this is a emotionally immature person, not because they want to be, but because they were never allowed to be.
Situational.
So to ask them to form their own boundaries and stand by it, they can't do that.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying you have to start by caring for yourself and journaling about who I am, what I like, you did, because you're learning you. You're learning you, and you can't give something, you can't pour something out of a cup that is empty.
Yeah.
Say that again.
You cannot pour something out of a cup that is empty.
Amen.
That you talking like that reminds me of a quote I read yesterday that says, "Trauma keeps you in a loop of your past. You'll be 25 with an 8-year-old mindset and thought process.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you people please, or overextend yourself, or stay places longer than you should have. Your inner child is screaming, saying, 'Finally, someone loves me.'"
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
And I know so many people in this situation with parent-child relationships where they cannot break free. And sometimes they have to do some drastic things. But it start with self-care, start with getting to know you, journaling, putting this out, and let this start becoming your building blocks of who you are. Outside of your parent approval, disapproval, view of yourself, of what they have, their commentary. You have to start, just like declawing.
And I'm noticing a lot of these tips that we're giving on how to manage emotional abuse from different versions of relationships. When you were mentioning friendships and you're mentioning from a parent-child, if I could speak on it from a married or girlfriend, boyfriend, or romantic relationship experience, it's very similar. That Soleil, as you mentioned before, making sure, you said educating. That's so important. A lot of people don't even know that they're in an emotionally abusive relationship, right? Because you may have, like you mentioned, have seen your father and mother go through whatever they went through, and then he would give her flowers. So your version of love or relationships in general is skewed. You have a misunderstanding of what that really is. And on top of that, you really have to ask yourself, once you educate yourself, you want to find the root of why you're even feeling this to begin with. That recognizing. And I always say that self-care and owning your feelings. A lot of times we're so afraid to delve deep inside. And I know for people in relationships, and I'll speak on being married, you're always advised not to let people in, right? These are it's your marriage. You don't want to have all these people talking and getting into, keep it private. But if you're unhappy and you're emotionally, physical, whatever type of abuse it is, you make sure that you tell somebody. Don't feel ashamed. There's no shame. The only shame is staying in that. Don't get out of that. Talk to somebody about that. You're not, and the other thing too is separate yourself from that abuse. Separation is essential to healing, right? And you are not obligated. I have to say this as especially when it comes from the religious point of view, where divorce may be looked down upon. You're not obligated to stay in that abuse. You can pray for somebody and love somebody from a distance.
Hello.
Because once you lose yourself, and remember, your kids are watching. People, you don't want to lose yourself in this process.
Mm-hmm.
Find yourself again,
Mm-hmm.
and separate yourself from that person, and make sure that you seek the help that you deserve and that you need.
Mm-hmm.
And also understand that just because you may be going to therapy and counseling, and you can be doing all the wonderful things, but some people may never change.
Mm-hmm.
And once you understand that, you have to understand also that it's okay not to go back to that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get sucked into the manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get sucked into the illusion of love and lies where they say I'm a different person, because people change for the moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? People will change in order to fit the mold that they want you to be in, so they can hold on to that control.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Right? So be strong enough for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and reestablish those relationships and set up boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And to piggyback what Lynn was saying,
Mm-hmm.
there's a quote that I read as well that kind of like wraps it up, and it says, people in therapy are often in therapy to deal with people in their lives who won't go to therapy, because that person is not willing to deal with their own problems. So then, kind of like Lynn was saying, they continue to make you feel whatever way they want you to feel. I think that's a horrible way to live, and I agree with Lynn wholeheartedly. Like, you have to find a way out, but you need to find that support system, like Soleil was talking about, trying to make sure that there are people that you're talking to, because if you only have one sided thought process, which is just believing what that person is saying or doing, spending time with other people outside of that friendship, if you're able to get away, or if you're able to just say, hey, I'm just going to spend some time with my girl, or I'm going to spend some time with one of my homeboys, as long as that person, you're able to find somebody who's not part of the situation, to just like express yourself in a healthy manner, to say, hey, I just need to see if this is wrong. Because sometimes people just want to know, like, is this normal? Because again, you might grow up in an environment where that abuse is normal. So now asking someone, I don't understand, but when he hits me, I know that it's wrong, but I don't feel that it's wrong. I don't understand. I still love him, but I don't know what to do. Either way, I think it's a good time to just, continue with what Lynn was saying in terms of just processing with yourself. And I want to ask Dr. Geneva, like, what would you like, what do you think we can do to help those individuals who are stuck in that process, and how do we help them see something different?
Yeah, thank you for asking, Georgia. As I tell you, I'm sitting here and I am really appreciating this conversation. It is such a powerful and necessary conversation. And as I'm listening to each of you share, it's all regardless of the type of relationship. The bottom line is, as we said earlier, emotional abuse is emotional abuse, and so it doesn't matter the age, the culture, the setting, and so therefore, how we manage that, uh, the things that I'm about to share will apply to, or should apply to, every session, and so every area. And so, as I'm listening to you share, we're talking about shifting paradigms, because individuals only know what they know. And if they, even if starting from a child, and we're holding on to those mental imprints and holding on to them, because if we remember the times when, well, dad was disrespectful, then dad turned around and he was all nice and bringing in flowers and chocolates, we're really wanting to get to the flowers and chocolate spot. But so shifting paradigms requires a process. And one of the things, Dr. Larry, if I might share, there are some tools that GC Scored has available for individuals who might want to use that. And one of the tools that's coming to my mind is one of my favorites is the roots and fruits. It's a tree exercise.
Oh, right, yeah.
And so that the recommendation would be for individuals, and this really is for adults, young adults and adults, to actually take the time to do the work. You're right. Learning takes place when we reflect on what we've learned. And sometimes we have to even understand what that learning is. But in that roots and fruits exercise is basically a tree and roots. So an individual would need to take the time to list out those, I would call them either concerns or dissatisfactions. What are those things that you're not satisfied with in your relationship? And then though you put the fruits out there, those are the fruits. Okay. And so then we have to back that down, really go back to the roots and consider what might have been some contributing factors to that dissatisfaction, to those things that you don't like. So and that's a part of recognizing and understanding, but a person has to go do the work and be honest with themselves. Now, on the contrary side of that, on that same exercise, flip the switch, flip the page, get another page, another tree, another set of roots, right? List out in the tree, in the fruit, the satisfaction, the desires, the thing that you desire to see. And then identify what kind of roots would produce that type of, or what type of situations would contribute to that happy spot. And then we have to actually do the work. And doing the work is some of everything that all of you have shared. Taking time for self-care, loving on oneself, pulling back, just withdrawing, not permanently, but kind of pulling back so you can have that time to reflect. Take time to identify your support system. Who are those people out there that you really know and can trust? Who will share the truth without casting their values onto your situation.
Yeah.
Those are just some things that I believe can be helpful in shifting paradigms. And Yvonne, you mentioned about the journal. So we got to document what we have learned,
right?
What we've recognized. We got to document even the very small steps in managing and documenting the small victories. We can't just expect to just jump to the happy place.
Right.
I'm sure that's what everybody strives to, but getting there is a process. And that paradigm I'm talking about is mindsets. We have to take the time to really rethink, reshape what we have internalized for so many years. And therein lies a part of the scope of our mission, which is to educate, equip, and empower. And so it takes time to educate oneself on what they are experiencing, why they are experiencing it. Now, how can they manage that experience? And prayerfully getting to the place of empowerment so that they can move forward with living their best lives.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Geneva, for such a good summarization of what we talked about this evening. Managing, we talked about recognizing the signs of emotional abuse. We talked about understanding, which is digging deeper. Where did it come from? Going to the root, understanding that the incident or incidents of emotional abuse taking place currently didn't start there. It started at the root, and we need to go back there to the root to be able to take care of the fruit, which is the behavior. Then we talked about managing. How do we manage? How do we cope? How do we handle being in abusive relationships and having the courage and the strength and the sense of self and significance to be able to get out of those relationships. And so now we are going to ask each co-host to give we're going to do a 10-minute. 10 second. Thank you. Yeah, not 10 minute. 10-second, your last words.
I'll start off with my 10 seconds. The path in creating a new you starts with creating new norms, one day at a time. Take care of yourself and enjoy the journey. There might be some bumps along the way, but at some point you'll get to a smooth road.
All right. Very good, brother.
Okay, very good, brother. All right, go ahead.
I would just like to say, remember that self-care is very important, and always remember that you are someone and that you are worth something. You are royalty in the eyes of God. Okay. So treat yourself as such.
All right. Okay, girl.
Right, yeah.
All right.
I have 2 quotes. The first is from Aisha Mirza, and it says, "It is not the bruises on the body that hurt. It is the wounds of the heart and the scars on the mind." And the second is a quote from Plautus, and that says, "Do you never look at yourself when you abuse another person?"
All right. Really deep. You guys are just getting more deeper. Just deep. You know, what's up with all that? I'm trying to figure something out.
Scholars.
You know, there was so many pearls of wisdom that were shared tonight, and I really hope that this discussion has helped someone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would just like to use my last seconds to say that you cannot change an abuser's behavior, but you can choose to change your response to it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Jennifer, you got something?
Is that me? Yes. A couple of things in this 10 seconds. I just like to say
10?
that in life we're on every journey on that road. You may encounter bumps or accidents that may cause you to detour, get off track. But just know you stick with the vision of where you want to go and get back on track, and you can lead yourself to that healthy, successful place. I also want to say that, March, the month of March is National Social Work Month. So in that regard, I'd like to encourage social workers everywhere to tune in and become engaged in this conversation, because the issues that we are discussing is within an everyday life of a social worker.
Okay, so my 10 seconds is, as air is to life,
yes,
so are social emotional competencies to relationships.
That's awesome. That's right.
All right, I'll say it one more time. As air is to life, so are social emotional competencies to relationships.
For anyone who may find themselves in an abusive relationship, whether that is a domestic violence, physical abuse, emotional abuse, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Again, that number is 1-800-799-7233.
And if you also want to join our conversation and you have something you want to share with the Access RUMERTIME Conversations team, you can send information to info@gcscored.org. Again, info@gcscored.org.
Thank you so much for being an active listener, and we can't wait to hear your comments. So please, as you listen to the podcast, please leave us some comments, some feedback, so we can know how you are doing as well. We thank you for listening. Until next week.
You have been listening to the Access RUMERTIME Conversations podcast. where the time is always rumor time, where we equip you to solve your problems one rumor at a time, where we educate you to transform your stories one rumor at a time, and where we empower you to become your own life coach one rumor at a time. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.